New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hello, and welcome back. I am Reverend Dr. Sharri Johnson, your host for Global Focus today. And we have an unusual situation today. The person who was scheduled to be on had an emergency and could not be here. But luckily, I have a genius producer. And she suggested a few months ago when something similar happened that I should have a pinch hitter team. So I called some people right then and arranged it. And one of them, when I called her last week and said, my person is gone, can you come in? Said, sure, put me in. So today we are going to be interviewing Reverend Dr. Claire Summerhill, who is from Las Vegas, Nevada, but her ministry is CSL Kenya. So it's really different and really interesting. Let me tell you a little bit about her, because she has a really... I think there was a time when this would have been called a colorful background. She was born to parents who had recently converted to the Mormon church. Her dad started out as an atheist, rocket scientist, became a Mormon. So she was raised as a Mormon, and she had her first spiritual experiences in that context. She left Mormonism in her early 30s with gratitude for the opportunities she'd had to learn, lead, teach, and serve, because she didn't just sit in the chairs. She put feet on her prayers. She was baptized a Catholic in 1989, and she continues to love the liturgy, symbolism, ritual, and soul-inspiring music of that tradition. They do have some really great music and some pretty vestments. After discovering New Thought in the early 2000s, she became a CSL practitioner in 2011, entered ministry school in 2013, same year as me, and was ordained a minister in 2019. She beat me by 2 years on that one. She has written a wonderful book called Walking on Water, which is on the shelf behind me, and which outlines the 7 steps to accomplishing things that seem impossible. How could you miss accomplishing things that seem impossible? Step 1 is probably recognizing that nothing is impossible, but I can't remember. Prior to studying for the ministry, here's where the colorful part comes in. First, she was an insurance adjuster. And then she was an attorney. And then she was a college professor. And in the midst of all that, she raised kids. She has 3 living children and 5 grandchildren. And she has been called to live simply and with joy. I'm reading this part because it's so cool. She has been called to live simply and with joy, awakening to her own divine magnificence as she encourages others and supports others in knowing and experiencing their oneness with all that is. Now, those others are in Kenya, but she's in Las Vegas, Nevada. Pretty cool, huh? Thank you so much, Reverend Claire, for agreeing to step in today. It's always wonderful when you're here. So, I understand that there's been some big news in Kenya lately.
Yes, and thank you so much for having me here. There's nothing I love more than talking about our teachings, the difference we make for people, the possibilities we open as people discover and explore our teachings. I have been involved with CSL Kenya for some years now. CSL Kenya was founded by an amazing minister named Reverend Connie Phelps. Perhaps some of you have heard her story. She heard a message in a meeting she was sitting in when she was asking, Spirit, what do you want me to do? And heard as clearly as words in her head, go to Africa. She had never been to Africa. She knew nothing about Africa, but she answered. And she went to Africa. She began teaching 2 or 3 people in her home. And before she knew it, by 2020, she had 5 practitioners ready to be licensed and organized the first Kenya Global Conference to bring people to Kenya to panel those first practitioners. I was privileged to be one of those and was simply blown away by the young man that we paneled. It was one of those, if perhaps some of you have had that wonderful experience of being on a panel for practitioners, when he gave the opening treatment for our time together, it was already perfectly clear that he had the consciousness of a practitioner. Reverend Connie, not too long after that, made her transition. And 2 ministers from Canada picked up the vision of what Kenya could be. And the vision has always been a center in Kenya led by Kenyans. We were there to guide and support and teach, but the goal was always that this would be a center led by Kenyans. We now have 15 practitioners in Kenya and 3 students in ministerial school.
I know, I've met one of them.
Yes, and they are, I've taught a number of classes. Zoom has been such an incredible gift. Before Zoom, students had to get home from work, had to drive perhaps an hour or an hour and a half to get to Reverend Connie's house, attend the class, and drive home. And with Zoom, we now have students from Nigeria, some students from Uganda, and we're expanding and we're spreading. And as Reverend Sharri said, we just had the second conference in Kenya. This was in February 2nd to 4th, so just barely finished. And an amazing conference. I was not able to attend this year, but what was shared about it, we had about 40 North Americans register and between 60 and 70 Kenyans who participated. Many from our community there who've taken classes, and many of their friends and relatives that they were eager to share their experiences with. And many of the presentations were made by our Kenyans, our students and practitioners. There were workshops, there were messages, and mostly it was a time of incredible celebration. The Kenyans, perhaps this is why I, in Las Vegas, relate to them. They're party people. They love to party. They love to get together and sing and dance and share food. And that's what this conference was about. My personal gift is, well, one of the very interesting things that happened in Kenya was, as I began to get to know these students, to see that so many of them had backgrounds just like mine. I mean, two cultures across the world from each other. These were people that many of them had been raised in a Catholic fundamentalist type environment where there are strict ideas of right and wrong, teachings of a God out there who's judgmental and ready to punish, and that you're trying to please. And for so many of them, somehow this just didn't fit. They were raised with that, but it just didn't fit. And as adults, they began kind of seeking and looking around. And of course, in today's world, wherever you are, You can find out about Wayne Dyer and Oprah Winfrey, and they began to read and to explore. And then so often they began to think there have to be some more people around that kind of share this, and they began looking. I mean, one amazing story was a young man who found the Science of Mind textbook and began reading it, but it was a little confusing and there was a lot to it. And he thought, oh, I'd just love to find someone that I could talk to about this. So he located CSL's home office in Golden, Colorado, and called there. And they said, well, that's interesting. You're in Nairobi, Kenya? We actually have a minister in Nairobi, Kenya, and that was Reverend Connie. And they connected, and he was one of the first practitioners. But the openness and the willingness to learn, to serve, have just been such a gift for me to be part of. And another interesting thing is, so Kenyans are taught that like, utmost respect to teachers. Like the teachers, just you never interrupt the teacher, you never disagree with the teacher. And it's been kind of a challenge for us to teach them to say, for me personally, feel free to interrupt me. I had to work hard because I like to interrupt people. To me, that's kind of how a conversation goes. You're interrupting each other. You're just both so excited. Conversation's moving forward. But if you interrupt them, they stop. You're the teacher, and so you have to be careful not to do that, which was interesting. But to teach them, you can disagree. We're not telling you what to believe. We're not telling you that we're right. What we're saying is offering you an invitation. Here's some things we found that work. Spiritual mind treatment. This isn't the right way to pray. This isn't the way you're supposed to pray. This isn't the way you have to pray. This is something that we found that works. That's powerful. Try it and see what happens.
Well, I think I have another gift for you, because you may not have been aware, or if you were aware, you may have forgotten, that Reverend Dr. Robert Brzezinski took a team from New Thought Media Network to Kenya for the February conference. I don't know how long it will be before it's available, but at least highlights are going to be on the New Thought Media Network website. So people will get to see the celebrating. And I've seen a few of the pictures and they just made me laugh. You know, I mean, they were just obviously having so blinking much fun. And February, while I was trapped in my garage by ice from the snow plow, that I just was jealous. So sorry to interrupt, but
thank you.
I wanted to be sure you knew that, and that we told the folks who are listening, because it will be well worth the visit to go to New Thought Media Network and look for the highlights of that conference, because it was great.
Absolutely. And that was a gift for Robert Brzezinski to agree to come to the conference and to work with a team of people in Kenya, training them and teaching them, and many things, both about sort of broadcasting and doing that, and also how to work together as a team to create something. He and his wife went, and the people in Kenya are so incredibly grateful, and I'm certainly looking forward to seeing some of the presentations that I've only, as Reverend Sharri has, seen little bits of it as things were posted by the people involved. It's kind of interesting. When I was in Kenya in 2020, one of the people I met is now a practitioner, and that conference was his first introduction. Somebody had said, come check this out. This is kind of an interesting thing. And he had come, and a couple of people weren't really even aware it was what we consider a church. It's actually not a church in Kenya, because they have these rules about starting new churches. So it's the foundation The Conscious Living Foundation is actually kind of what it formerly is in Kenya. But now, 4 years later, here he is, a practitioner presenting, talking, sharing, just such a wonderful thing to have happened in 4 years. I'd kind of like to talk about all of our paths.
Oh, absolutely.
To where we are today, because this is just a subject that fascinates me. I remember one of my, might have been my kind of first thing that I did in ministry school. One of the wonderful things about being in ministry school is the retreats. Twice a year, we have retreats where everyone gets together for a weekend, a few days, with just a time to go deeper and explore and come together. And it just happened that because of when I started, a retreat was like the first thing I'd done before I even took any classes. And one of the exercises in this retreat was to look at what had brought us to where we are right now in our lives here as students in ministry school. And as I looked back at that and spent this time on that, I realized that every single thing in my life had led me to be right there, right at that point. And as I've looked at my life since then, amazing experiences, life continues to expand, and the experiences come up that are just what we need to learn, to grow, to find our way to serve in the world and what's ours to do. I've realized this, that everything that happens is a gift. We so often, many of us have this tendency to be stuck in a place where we wish things had been different. How many people that we talk to, if their parents had been different, if this had been different, they'd have a better life. To realize that everything that happened really is a gift has just been one of the incredible experiences of my life. It's Reverend Sharri mentioned that I was raised as a Mormon, and it's really interesting. I come from a family of 8 children, and of those, 6 left the Mormon Church as adults, and most of them have very negative feelings toward the Mormon Church, anger, frustration, and somehow I never did. I was always so grateful for what I learned. Reverend Sharri mentioned my dad was an atheist before he joined the Mormon Church, and it's a really interesting story. His choice. Some missionaries from the Mormon Church, these young men that go around, showed up at their door, and one of them was wise enough to ask my father to do an experiment. So he was a scientist, PhD physicist. He was still working on his degrees then, but he was a scientist. He was an atheist, but he liked experiments. And this missionary asked him, this experiment he asked him to do was to read the Book of Mormon and then pray about it and think about it and watch and see what kind of feelings came up. Well, my dad couldn't resist an experiment. He was a scientist. So he said, well, okay, I'll do an experiment. So he read the book. It's a kind of strange book about supposedly some people that lived in the Americas, around the time of Jesus and before and after that. And then he looked at what he felt about it and to notice. And the emotions he had were of kind of like when you solve a mathematical equation, like a sense of just kind of rightness and kind of excitement in a way, and very positive, good feeling. So he took that as his answer, and they made the decision to join the Mormon Church. The reason I love that story is I come from that background of do an experiment. Don't accept what other people tell you because they said to. Do an experiment, find out for yourself, read, study, try it out. And here, all these years later, now I'm teaching these incredible students in Kenya. Do an experiment, try it out. We're scientists. That's what it means to be a scientist. Sharri's a scientist.
Yep.
So one of the reasons she and I connect, I think, is we come from this background of science, being willing to do an experiment, to try something out. We have a lot of really wonderful projects going on in Kenya. And if you're interested, Kenya has a wonderful website, and it's very simple, cslkenya.org. And you can go to that website and find out about some of the projects that we're involved in. We sponsor a school in a slum that's in Nairobi. And the head of the school, and she had started this school before, thank you, Sharri. She'd started this school actually before she discovered Science of Mind, out of a commitment to make a difference to these children living in poverty, in huts and shacks, and if they're lucky, a cinder block square without running water or electricity. And knowing that education was what made the difference. But then she discovered Science of Mind, and she is one of the students that's in ministerial school now, actually. And CSL Kenya has done a lot to sponsor students in this school for simple things like providing uniforms, shoes, school supplies, books, helping to pay the teachers, and so on. It's so amazing what a small amount can do. I mean, they were sitting in these wooden desks, beat up with 5 kids like crammed in where 3 kids are meant to sit because they don't want to turn students away who want to come. And, for $200, we can provide a beautiful new desk and enough desks for children to sit at. So that's one of the projects. We have a project where one of our practitioners travels out to some outlying areas. A trip takes 3 hours, partly on these little motorbikes that they ride or on the bus, to teach young people at a boys' home where they take in boys off the street and teach them and provide them. And he goes twice a month to teach Science of Mind principles. Incredible projects like this, as well as the many of the students, they can't even afford really to pay for the materials or the registration fee for the classes. And we don't want anyone who wants to take a class to be denied. The teachers are volunteers, and we seek sponsorships and donations to help cover the materials and so on. So that you might check out that website and get on the mailing list to get the newsletter, which is a great way to kind of keep up on what's happening. Sharri, do you have any questions or anything else you'd like me to talk about more about Kenya?
Well, yeah, you've told me some really great stories about some of the students when you would ask them a question and they would give you an answer that at first blush seems like it comes out of left field, but in fact turns out to be straight from spirit, like an arrow. So if you'd like to share some of those stories, I think our audience would love it.
Yes, I'm. What immediately comes to mind is this one time I was, it was a group of young adults, and we met, I can't remember if we were meeting once a week or twice a month or whatever. And it wasn't really a formal class. It was more just to talk about what people wanted to talk about. And at the beginning of the class, we'd have a check-in, like many of us love to do in our classes. How was your week? What did you learn? And so we come to this one young man, and he said, "Oh, I had a wonderful week. I had so many opportunities to practice patience. And that's something I've really been working on." And I simply had to laugh. Like, how many of us would have told that story that way? I mean, it would take me time to get there. Like, the first thing is, oh my gosh, all these people that are just irritating me and on my nerves and don't get it. And why are they like that? And then, maybe later, much later, I might look and say, oh, yes, that's right. I was asking to learn patience. But for that to be the first thing that came up for him, this foundation, I just finished co-teaching a foundations class. We always have 2 teachers in every class because of internet issues, because we don't know if someone's internet might fail or whatever. So we always have 2 teachers. So I just finished co-teaching this foundations. And one of the wonderful things was the first week of the class, as we sometimes do when we teach, we ask the students what they wanted out of the class. And, foundations is a beginning class. It's some of them might have taken one class before, maybe change your thinking, change your life, or what we have, a discovery class that's a 4-week introduction class, just to kind of, for people who are curious. But for many of them, it's a beginning class. And many people in North America and in the United States where I've taught, it's about getting stuff for themselves. They want to, get a better job, or they want to solve some problem that they have. All of these students, it was about finding out what they were called to do in life, what was theirs to do, to go deeper into what it meant to live a spiritual life, to learn tools to support them in serving other people. That just blew me away, to tell the truth, because even even many people that, and this is fine, there's nothing wrong with it, are in that stage of thinking about themselves. How do I create the life I want? How do I change this situation? How do I get out of this situation that's causing me problems? And to see these students at this very early stage focused on what's mine to do, how can I serve? And to be willing to look at these deep questions and to be vulnerable. What do I believe about the nature of God? And how has that affected the life that I have now? I can't think actually, now that I'm thinking, we had one of our practitioners who, and she's also one of the students in ministerial school now, and she was concerned because the people in her village, many of these people have a village or villages, rural areas that they came from and now are in Nairobi, but they go back to visit their villages, perhaps to see their families or on holidays and so on. And she was concerned because her village didn't have a source of clean water. And the people had to walk to the neighboring village, which I don't know, 2 or 3 miles away, daily almost, to get water. And so she's steeped in the teachings of science of mind. And these people don't say, well, I can't do that. They say, well, we're taught. You set an intention, you create a mental equivalent, you treat, you're willing, you're open, you're ready. You allow spirit without dictating how it's going to happen, trusting it'll happen. So she said, we need a well in this village. I don't know how much wells cost, but they're expensive. And she didn't have any money, and there wasn't any money available for it. But the vision was clear to her. She could see this well in her village. So she started talking to people about it. We're going to have a well in our village. Our village needs a well. We're going to have a well in our village. And she talked to people, and one of the people she talked to got so kind of inspired and excited about it. That person was talking to other people. And of course, one of the people that heard about it was a person that had money and got excited and said, yes, I'm going to fund this well. I mean, just an unheard of thing. And the well was created. The well is there now. The student created a special kind of ritual where the people came together to celebrate and give thanks for the difference this well would make in their lives. You just can't help but be so inspired by that because, I hate to say this, but a lot of us, we go, well, yeah, it works. But,
But there's something else about that particular student that's really important.
Sharri knows her.
I am also on, one of the things that I do is that I am on the CSL Global Heart of Peace initiative. And up until this year, for about 5 years, every Monday, there was a live on Zoom meditation or a recorded on Zoom meditation, if necessary, for world peace. This student recorded one because she would have to get up in the middle of the night to do it at the time that it was supposed to be broadcast live. She recorded this amazing meditation and sent it to us. And it was outdoors. She was sitting on the side of a creek, and it was just gorgeous. And the reason I bring this up is that if you go to the Facebook page of Global Heart of Peace Initiative, you can look in the archives and find that meditation, that video, and view it. And I recommend that you do that.
Yes. This is why, for me, it has been such a gift to serve in Kenya, is to be inspired by these students who are open to what Science of Mind teaches, who are willing to take it and use it. And there are a lot of challenges in Kenya. There's, like in so many, there's fraud, there's corruption, there's problems with infrastructure, income disparity, poverty. But to see the Kenyans taking that on, just step by step, little by little, of meditation here to make a difference. Oh, well, for this village, this conference, to come together to celebrate. Several of the people who were there told me that had been at the conference in 2020 were telling me about the difference in energy. So the 2020 conference is like all seriousness, like Dr. Ken Gordon was there, and Kenya got its sort of official charter, and it was all just kind of official and these serious talks. 2024 was totally about celebration, the joy of coming together in community, of this feeling of being one, and look what we can create together. Really embracing this idea of a world that works for everyone and for all of creation, and that it's possible. And we're not going to get resigned because we're small and we're just a few people here. We're going to start where we are and grow. At the conference in 2020, we planted a tree at the near this Maasai Lodge where we stayed for part of it. And of course, that tree is a symbol of Africa, the work in Africa, the difference, just expanding and spreading and making a difference in the world.
Well, that's the most perfect intro I ever heard for my 4 questions. The first one is there anything you wanted to talk about that I haven't asked you about?
Okay. So I was going to talk about that. I've written a little book. It's called Walking on Water. It's about accomplishing things that seem impossible, based on the story of Peter walking on the water. It's a book about balancing what I call choice and surrender. So often in our lives, there are times when it's time to relax and go with the flow and let it be. I call that surrender, not in a negative sense, but in a beautiful sense of going with the flow, allowing. But there are other times when it's time to take action and choose and make things happen. And often we get confused about that. We're surrendering when it's time to take action. We're trying to force things to happen when it's time to go with the flow. And that is what Walking on Water is about. The choice, surrender, balance. When is it time to let it be? When is it time to take action? And what's possible when those come together in that perfect yin and yang energy? So, I'd love it if you'd check it out, and then, like put some wonderful comments on Amazon. So I'd move up from, 10,018 in my field to, something else. But check it out.
6 would be good.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, next question. How does what you're doing now in Kenya and everywhere else that you're doing it, because you're not only in Kenya, how does that encourage, enhance, sustain, support, pick your own verb, conscious evolution?
So it's really interesting. I'm currently on a committee that's kind of evaluating a CSL class that is right now called Advanced Consciousness Studies. So I've spent a lot of time talking about or thinking about this idea of what does it mean to be conscious, and what actually is consciousness. And so I think everything that we're all doing is part of this conscious evolution. And for me, being conscious means being aware, being awake. It seems like so many of us have spent so much of our lives kind of half asleep. And now and then something wakes us up, an incredible service or ritual or experience. And as we do that together, we see this conscious evolution, this expanding, this growing into the next stage of existence, of life, of what's possible. We do live now many of us in the world, in this place of survival, and what's possible as we evolve past that. So of course, everything I'm doing, every experience I have, every gift that I receive, I hope is part of that, of my conscious evolution. And not until not too long ago, I had this way of kind of putting myself down that it was taking me so long to learn a few things. Like, oh my gosh, I'd get something. Oh my gosh, it's a wonderful glimpse of truth, experience of reality. But why did it take me so long? And I've let go of that now. Good. It takes as long as it takes. And that's how evolution works. As long as we're continuing to expand, the evolution is occurring. And it's an exciting thing to be a part of that and to see it happening. And for each of us to do our little part in doing that. For me to do my little part in the conscious evolution of humanity.
Well, this is something I've not said before, but that's the best answer I ever got to that question. Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you, I know you came in as a pinch hitter, but boy, what a bonus we got today.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me.
We got today. So next question, third question. Sounds like that one you just answered, except instead of conscious evolution, it's world peace. How does what you're doing in Kenya and in Las Vegas and anywhere else you are, France, wherever, how does that contribute, support, unveil, release world peace?
Of course, that's such an important question for all of us right now. We seek peace, we say we want peace, and yet we live in this world where there's so much war, so much violence, and it seems kind of unending. And it seems sometimes like we just can't get enough of it, in fact. Something settles down in one area, something else has to explode somewhere else. So the first thing is to know that everything is actually perfect the way it is. People argue with me when I say that. They say, how can you say that? There's war, there's violence, there's people dying, there's people just who only want power and are willing to do anything. So how can you say it's perfect? It's perfect in the way a seed is perfect. And the way a seed is perfect is that it has within it the potential to become a tree. There's nothing wrong with the seed. Doesn't need to be fixed. Doesn't need to be changed. It's perfect the way it is. It's a perfect seed, but in it, it's all that's necessary to expand into a sprout, a tree, blossoms, fruit, an orchard. So I look at our world today, and it'd be easy enough for me to get resigned and discouraged and hopeless and overwhelmed and say there's nothing I can do. So all I can do is be at peace within myself, continue to teach peace, one person at a time, one class at a time, one congregation at a time, with a book perhaps, spread wider. So I'm hoping that everything I'm doing is, in my personal way, contributing to peace, because that's what we're seeking, is that peace of God, the knowingness, the oneness.
Well, that's 2 for 2. Let's go for the last one. My goodness. Supposing that every single little detail goes exactly the way you want it to go, every encounter, every event, every experience, every relationship unfolds exactly the way you want it to go. What does Reverend Dr. Claire Summerhill in CSL Kenya look like 10 years from now?
What a beautiful, beautiful vision to think about. I certainly see a physical place in Kenya to come together. We have two places now. Actually, we have an office where we have a library and where people can come to get materials, and we can do small things like that. And we have one of our students who has a kind of a ranch that we have that we call our place, where people can gather, but it's kind of an outside place. So I do see a beautiful structure where people can come together. I see centers in two of our outlying areas. There's one called Kisi and one called Kisimu that have thriving and growing groups of students there. I see our classes being taught by our practitioners and ministers. I see these 3 students that are now in ministry school and others who will join them stepping into their power. I mean, I can see them becoming known worldwide and called to be keynote speakers at conferences and retreats and inspiring people with their wisdom and their experience as they open themselves up to what's possible. I do actually see the North American leaders and teachers that are now quite involved kind of moving into the background as we truly have centers in Kenya led by Kenyans, and clearly us learning from them rather than us trying to teach them the little bit that we've come to understand. It's actually a glorious, glorious thing to think about. And of course, I see that tree that we planted towering and as a symbol of continued growth and stretching outward and upward.
Wonderful. Now, normally my last question is, will you come back? But I asked you that the last time you were here and you said yes, and I've already got you booked for April 16th. So you're hooked.
I'm looking forward to it.
Be sure you're here on. And hold on, I'll look and see who's coming next week. And let you know that too. Our guest for next, I do know who it is. Our guest for next week, this is so cool, is 2 people. Reverend Jeannie Kataoka has been on a couple of times before, but she's bringing with her Reverend Jenny Evans, who is an animal communicator. Reverend Jeannie is an animal chaplain. She does a lot of other stuff too, but primarily she's an animal chaplain. But Jeannie is an animal communicator. And I've tried to get her on 3 times and we had conflicts, but they'll be here next Tuesday, rain or shine. Don't miss it. It's going to be so cool. And in the meantime, have a great week. And I have to say this because I live in Kansas City. Go Chiefs. All right. Bye-bye.
Amazing, amazing, you will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing, you will do amazing things.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network, come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.